The morning sun gleamed off the faded red paint of a 1974 Ford Bronco parked quietly in a small suburban driveway. Its edges were chipped, and the chrome grille bore the marks of decades. Yet there was an unmistakable pride in the way it stood like a sentinel of memories. John Thompson, now in his late 60s, ran his hand along the worn steering wheel, feeling the grooves carved over 45 years of drives, adventures, and milestones. Every scratch told a story. Every dent whispered secrets of journeys that spanned highways, forests, and dusty backroads. Neighbors often marveled at his dedication. Most people would have traded that old thing years ago, they said. But to John, the Bronco was more than a carette, was a companion, a keeper of moments both joyous and painful. From first dates to cross-country trips, from the birth of his children to quiet Sunday drives, it had witnessed life in its rawest forms. Today, he would take it on one last journey before the winter frost set in, a ritual that had become almost sacred. As he started the engine, the familiar roar echoed like a heartbeat, setting the stage for stories that only a lifetime behind the wheel could produce. John slid into the worn leather seat, the scent of aged vinyl mingling with faint traces of pine from previous summer trips. His hands, calloused from years of work and adventure, gripped the steering wheel instinctively. Outside, the quiet neighborhood seemed ordinary, yet for John, every corner held echoes of past escapades. The Ford Bronco, with its stubborn engine and rugged frame, had carried him through thunderstorms, mountain trails, and countless early mornings where the world was still asleep. His daughter, Emily, often asked why he refused to upgrade, why he clung so fiercely to a vehicle that, by all accounts, should have been retired decades ago. "It's not just a car," Emily John replied one afternoon, her hand brushing the dusty dashboard. "It's a part of me, of our family, every journey, every memory. It's in here." The day began like any other, yet John's mind wandered to the adventures yet untold. He remembered a road trip to the Rockies, when the Bronco's old tires struggled through snow, yet never surrendered. He remembered teaching Emily to drive along winding country roads, her laughter mingling with the engine's growl. Each story deepened his bond with the vehicle. Today, as he started the engine once more, he felt a familiar thrill, a pulse of life connecting man and machine, ready to face whatever roads lay ahead. The Bronco rumbled down the quiet streets, its engine singing a song of loyalty and endurance. John's eyes sparkled with nostalgia as he navigated familiar corners, each turn recalling a memory he had stored in the heart of that old vehicle. The dashboard, scratched and faded, bore witness 2 decades of triumphs and small failures, a history etched in metal and sweat. Today, he was driving not just for himself, but to relive the spirit of every journey that had made him who he was. Passing the old gas station where he had first bought the Bronco, John remembered the dealer's words, "She's a beast, but she's yours." And it had been true. The Bronco had carried him through snowy winters, blistering summers, and countless miles of winding highways. There had been nights of laughter with friends camping in the back, mornings racing against the sunrise to reach distant lakes, and quiet moments alone, reflecting on life's twists and turns. Emily's laughter echoed in his mind, the memory of her first attempts at steering still vivid, her tiny hands barely reaching the wheel, guided by his gentle coaching. Yet the journey was not without challenges. The Bronco had broken down in the middle of nowhere more times than he could count, forcing him to rely on ingenuity and patience. Rainstorms tested the old wipers, and rusty hinges groaned like old bones, yet John never wavered. Each obstacle had become part of the bond between man and machine. There was a satisfaction in the simplicity of it, a quiet pride that came from knowing that the vehicle, much like him, had endured. As he drove through a winding forest road, the leaves rustling like whispers, John felt a connection beyond memory. The Bronco was more than a relic. It was a companion in a life defined by moments, large and small, that could never be replaced by a newer, shinier model. With every mile, the car reaffirmed its place in his life. The engine's hum became a rhythm, a heartbeat that tied past to present. And as the sun dipped behind distant hills, John realized that love for this old vehicle was not about nostalgia alone. It was about loyalty, endurance, and the stories that only time could write, etched forever in red paint and steel. As John turned onto the familiar dirt road leading to his childhood cabin, he noticed a flicker of movement near the old oak tree at the edge of the property. At first, he assumed it was a deer, or perhaps a neighbor's dog, but as he slowed the Bronco, A figure emerged from the shadows, a man, middle-aged, holding a camera. Confusion prickled at John's spine. Who could be here on his land, watching the cabin that had held so many of his memories? The stranger stepped forward, raising a hand in cautious greeting. "Mr. Thompson, I hope I'm not intruding," he said. "I'm a historian documenting classic cars and their owners. I heard about your Bronco, and I had to see it for myself." John's brow furrowed. In all his years of driving that faithful vehicle, he had never imagined anyone tracking him down for a story. Curiosity battled his instinct for privacy. "Well, you've found it," he replied cautiously, gesturing to the Bronco. "It's been with me through a lot, but it's just a car, isn't it?" The historian shook his head, eyes wide with genuine admiration. "No, sir. It's history. It's culture. You've preserved something most people discard. The stories this vehicle could tell." His voice trailed reverent as he circled the Bronco, documenting every dent, every rusted hinge, every mark of a life lived fully. John felt a strange mix of pride and unease. The Bronco had always been a personal sanctuary, a silent witness to his life, but now it was being observed, analyzed, celebrated in ways he hadn't expected. He recalled Emily's teasing question years ago, why he clung to this old car. Perhaps this was the answer. It wasn't just his memories anymore. The Bronco had become a bridge between past and present, a symbol that others could admire, even revere. As the historian snapped pictures and jotted notes, John realized the Bronco's story was far from over. Its significance had grown beyond the driveway, beyond quiet Sunday drives. He glanced at the vehicle, its red paint gleaming in the late afternoon sun, and a surge of emotion hit him. This was no longer just nostalgia. The Bronco was a legacy, and for the first time, John understood that the bond he had nurtured for decades had a place in the wider world, waiting to be shared. After the historian packed up his equipment, John remained seated in the Bronco, staring at the rearview mirror. The quiet of the cabin property felt different, now heavier, charged with anticipation. He could still hear the faint click of the camera shutter echoing in his mind, a reminder that the Bronco, his faithful companion, had entered the public eye. Emily, who had arrived earlier to help unpack supplies, sensed the change immediately. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, brushing a lock of hair from her face. Her tone mixed curiosity with concern, a reflection of her lifelong fascination with her father's devotion to the old vehicle. John exhaled slowly, gripping the steering wheel. "I didn't expect someone to care this much about her," he said, nodding toward the Bronco. "It's just our family car." Emily smiled knowingly. "Maybe it's more than that. You've kept it alive, Dad. That kind of dedication doesn't go unnoticed." Her words stirred a strange sense of validation in him. For years, he had brushed off the idea that others might see the Bronco as remarkable. Now, in light of the historian's visit, he couldn't deny the truth. The afternoon sun dipped lower, casting elongated shadows across the cabin yard. John started the engine again, easing the Bronco onto the winding path that led back to the main road. He felt an unfamiliar mix of pride and responsibility, as though the vehicle carried not only his memories, but now the weight of recognition. Each turn of the wheel, each vibration from the old suspension seemed to reinforce a new awareness. The Bronco was no longer a private relic. Emily climbed into the passenger seat, laughter softening the tension. "So, are we famous now, Dad?" she teased. John chuckled, the sound deep and resonant. "Maybe in a small way," he admitted, "but fame isn't why she matters. It's the stories, the life we've shared." As they drove toward the horizon, John realized that the Bronco's role in his life had shifted subtly. It was no longer just a vessel for memories. It had become a bridge to others, a tangible connection to a world that suddenly seemed larger, more appreciative of history and devotion. Adjusting to this newfound attention wasn't easy, but with Emily by his side, he felt ready to face the next chapter, whatever roads, literal or figurative, lay ahead. The next morning, John awoke to a call that would shift the course of his quiet routine. A local car club had learned of the historian's visit and was eager to feature his 1974 Bronco in an upcoming showcase. While some neighbors were excited on his behalf, others questioned why he would allow the vehicle to step into the spotlight after all these years. John felt torn. The Bronco had always been a private companion, a keeper of memories, yet the opportunity was unique, a chance to share its story. Emily, sensing her father's hesitation, offered a gentle push. "Dad, think of it as a celebration, not a performance. The Bronco has carried us through decades. It deserves recognition." John nodded slowly, weighing her words. The thought of his childhood cabin, quiet trails, and long drives across open roads, clashing with crowds and cameras, sparked a mix of excitement and unease. As the week progressed, preparations began. John worked tirelessly to ensure the Bronco was in top condition. Oil was changed, tires inspected, and rust spots treated carefully. Each action a ritual blending practicality with reverence. Simultaneously, old friends from decades past began reaching out, curious about the showcase. Their messages stirred nostalgia, but also the weight of responsibility. Could the vehicle truly handle this new chapter without losing its essence? A complication arose when John discovered a mechanical issue during a routine test drive, a stubborn leak in the fuel line that had been dormant for years. Fixing it would require skill and patience, testing his knowledge and the Bronco's resilience. Emily offered to assist, her excitement mirroring her father's dedication. Together, they worked late into the evening, tightening fittings and replacing worn components, their laughter occasionally punctuated by moments of frustration. Through this process, the Bronco became more than a car or a story. It became a symbol of persistence, patience, and shared effort. Every problem solved reinforced the bond between John, Emily, and the vehicle, while each new challenge reminded them that history requires care. As the night settled, John stood back, wiping grease from his hands, and realized that this subchapter filled with challenges, preparation, and connection was just as meaningful as the journeys the Bronco had carried them on decades ago. The day of the car showcase arrived with a crisp morning breeze, sunlight glinting off the Bronco's carefully polished red paint. John felt a knot of tension in his chest as he guided the vehicle into position among rows of pristine vehicles, all gleaming under the morning sun. Crowds gathered, snapping photos and exchanging impressed murmurs. Yet, amid the admiration, John wrestled with a deeper, quieter concern. Had he exposed too much of a private world? The Bronco had always been a personal sanctuary, and now it stood as a public exhibit. Emily noticed his furrowed brow and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Dad, look at them. They're appreciating your story, your effort. Isn't that what matters?" Her words were kind, but they also highlighted his internal struggle. Could a vehicle that had been a lifeline, a constant companion through storms and triumphs, truly survive being seen, analyzed, and celebrated by strangers? As the day unfolded, visitors approached with questions, praising the vehicle's resilience, its enduring charm, and its unmistakable character. Each compliment stirred conflicting emotions in John. Pride, yes, but also a lingering fear of losing the intimacy that had defined his relationship with the Bronco. Emily handled the interviews with ease, recounting tales of weekend trips, family adventures, and the moments that made the car part of their lives. Johnny's son's absorbing her words while grappling with his protective instincts. At one point, a young man asked about the Bronco's age and condition, noting the faint scratches and worn edges. "It's seen a lot," John replied quietly, realizing how personal each mark truly was. Each scratch is a memory, each dent a lesson. The comment drew nods from the audience, some teary-eyed, others smiling knowingly. Later, as the crowd thinned, John and Emily sat on the grass beside the Bronco. Silence fell, punctuated by the distant hum of departing engines. John reflected on the day, recognizing that this experience had shifted something fundamental. The Bronco had survived scrutiny and admiration, but more importantly, he had survived opening a part of his life to others. Through vulnerability and shared stories, the vehicle had become a bridge between past and present, father and daughter, private memories and public celebration. The dilemma of exposure had transformed into pride and connection, leaving John with a renewed understanding of loyalty, love, and the stories a car could carry across generations. A few days after the showcase, John received an unexpected letter in the mail. The envelope was worn, handwritten, and lacked a return address. He hesitated before opening it, a flicker of unease passing through him. Inside, a single sheet of paper contained a note that read, "Your Bronco is famous, but not everyone remembers its true story. Meet me where the river bends at sunset." No signature, no explanation, just an address and a time. John felt a chill run down his spine. Could this be a prank or something more serious? Emily noticed his sudden pallor. "What is it, Dad?" she asked, peering over his shoulder. John carefully folded the note, his mind racing. "I don't know," he admitted. But someone claims there's more to the Bronco's history than even I know. Curiosity battled caution. For decades, he had lived with the vehicle, believed he had uncovered its every story, yet this letter hinted at hidden truths waiting to surface. As the day wore on, John replayed memories of the Bronco's early days. There had been brief mentions in old letters from a previous owner, cryptic remarks about long-forgotten trips and mysterious companions, but nothing concrete. Could someone from the past be reaching out, holding pieces of the Bronco's untold story? The thought was both thrilling and unnerving. Emily insisted on joining him when he decided to investigate, her excitement a counterbalance to his anxiety. "If there's more to know, we should face it together," she said. As they drove toward the river bend in the fading afternoon light, each mile brought a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The Bronco, ever faithful, carried them steadily, its engine a comforting constant against the uncertainty. Arriving at the secluded location, shadows lengthened, painting the surroundings in hues of gold and amber. John and Emily scanned the area, alert to any sign of movement. A figure emerged from the trees, holding a box wrapped in oil-stained paper. "John Thompson." The voice called. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and for the first time, the Bronco's long history seemed to stretch beyond memory into mystery. John's hands tightened around the steering wheel as he realized that this vehicle, his companion, his confidant, was about to reveal a secret that could change everything he believed about its past. The figure stepped closer, revealing an elderly man with weathered hands and eyes that held decades of memories. "John Thompson," he began, his voice low but steady. "I knew your Bronco long before you did. I was its second owner, back when it first left the factory." John's heart raced. He had believed he knew the full story of the vehicle, yet here was someone claiming a chapter he had never encountered. Emily, leaning slightly forward, asked, "Why now? Why after all these years?" The man hesitated, then lifted the box he carried. Inside were photographs, receipts, and handwritten notes documenting the Bronco's early journeys, adventurous, others mysterious. There were images of remote locations, old road trips with people John had never met, and faded maps marked with destinations that sparked curiosity. The realization hit John. The Bronco's life had been rich and layered long before it became part of his family's story. As John sifted through the artifacts, memories of his own adventures mingled with these newfound revelations. He recognized Pattersea Bronco's resilience, the scars that had always puzzled him, and the tire marks on roads he had never visited. Emily watched silently, sensing the bond between her father and the vehicle deepened even further. This was no longer just about nostalgia. It was about understanding the full scope of a legacy that had survived decades. The elderly man spoke again, sharing anecdotes about the vehicle's travels, the people it had carried, and the challenges it had faced. Each story built a bridge between the past and the present, revealing connections that John had never imagined. He realized that the Bronco was more than a family heirloom. It was a symbol of endurance, loyalty, and shared human experience. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, John and Emily felt a profound sense of connection. The vehicle had brought together generations, weaving together lives and stories in ways they could never have predicted. The subplots of discovery, reconciliation, and shared memory intertwined seamlessly, creating a tapestry that honored the Bronco's enduring spirit. For John, the revelation was transformative. He now understood that the vehicle's significance extended beyond personal memory. It was part of a greater story, one that spanned decades, people, and places. And with Emily at his side, ready to carry the legacy forward, the Bronco's journey continued not just as a machine, but as a living archive of experiences, emotions, and connections that transcended time. Days after the unexpected meeting by the river bend, John felt a restless tension that had been absent for years. The Bronco sat in the driveway, gleaming under the morning sun. Yet the vehicle that had always brought comfort now seemed to carry a weight of expectation. The artifacts from the elderly man, photographs, notes, and maps lay scattered across the kitchen table, evidence of a hidden past that John had never anticipated. Questions pressed against him. Who else had known of the Bronco's journeys? What stories remained untold? Emily, sensing her father's unease, tried to offer reassurance. "Dad, you've always cared for her. Maybe the Bronco's story is bigger than we thought, but that doesn't change our memories." Her voice was gentle, yet even she felt the stirrings of uncertainty. The excitement of discovery mingled with the unease of exposure. Each new artifact seemed to deepen the mystery, revealing paths John had never traveled and choices he had never made. The critical moment arrived when a call came from a local automotive museum requesting permission to exhibit the Bronco alongside historical vehicles of national significance. John's heart raced. Accepting would mean placing the vehicle, the intimate witness of his life's journey, under constant public scrutiny. Refusing might feel like betraying the opportunity to honor its legacy. The Bronco, ever silent, seemed to hum in quiet anticipation. John spent hours contemplating the decision, driving the familiar roads alone. The Bronco's engine, a comforting companion, yet a reminder of what was at stake. The vehicle had endured storms, breakdowns, and long stretches of isolation. Now, it faced the test of relevance, of recognition, and of trust. Emily joined him for part of the drive, their conversations weaving through nostalgia, responsibility, and the emotional gravity of preserving a legacy. By evening, the tension had mounted to its peak. John parked the Bronco beneath the oak tree, tracing the familiar grooves on the steering wheel. He realized the conflict was not merely about a car, but about choice, legacy, and the preservation of meaning. The decision he faced would shape not only the Bronco's future, but the way the world perceived the symbol of loyalty and devotion. In that moment, father and daughter shared a silent understanding. The upcoming choice would test the depths of their bond and the Bronco's place in history, preparing them for a turning point that would define the remainder of their journey together. The following morning, John and Emily arrived at the museum to discuss the exhibition details. The polished floors reflected rows of pristine vehicles, each representing decades of automotive history. Museum staff greeted them warmly, clearly impressed by the Bronco's reputation. Yet, John felt a tension that went beyond logistics. The Bronco, his trusted companion, now stood as the center of scrutiny. Decisions had to be made, how much of its story would be shared, and how much would remain private. A curator approached, clipboard in hand, her enthusiasm palpable. Mr. Thompson, the Bronco is a rare find. Its history, condition, and enduring legacy are remarkable. We'd like to feature it prominently, highlighting every adventure it survived. John listened, nodding, but unease gnawed at him. Every photograph, every anecdote shared in the exhibit would expose memories he had long held sacred. Emily noticed her father's hesitation. "Dad, it's your choice," she said softly, placing a hand over his. "We can control what's shared. We decide the narrative." John exhaled, feeling a swell of gratitude. Her presence was a reminder that legacy was not just about recognition, it was about stewardship. As discussions continued, John realized the decision was not merely administrative. It was a confrontation with time, memory, and personal history. Accepting the exhibition meant embracing vulnerability, opening the door to admiration and critique alike. Refusing could feel like hiding, as though the Bronco's story would vanish unappreciated. The weight of decades pressed upon him. The Bronco, a silent witness to the internal struggle. After hours of deliberation, John stepped outside, placing a hand on the hood. The red paint reflected sunlight, the dents and scratches gleaming like trophies. Memories of long drives, storms endured, and quiet family moments flooded back. He turned to Emily, her eyes steady and encouraging. "We've shared so much with each other already," he said, voice resolute. "It's time the world knows part of the story, but only the part that matters." The curator, sensing the decision, smiled. John had chosen a path that honored both the Bronco's history and his personal memories. The confrontation, the tension, and the uncertainty had culminated in a deliberate act of balance, recognition without surrender, legacy without compromise. With Emily at his side, John felt a newfound peace. The Bronco, steady and enduring, had guided them to this moment, ready to face its public future while preserving the soul that had carried them through 45 years of life, love, and adventure. The night before the exhibition, John couldn't sleep. The Bronco sat in the driveway, bathed in the soft glow of the moon, every curve and scratch casting shadows that seemed alive. He walked around the vehicle, tracing each dent with a finger, recalling storms, rough roads, and countless memories. The Bronco had endured years of challenges, yet tomorrow it would face a new kind of trial. The scrutiny of the world, the weight of anticipation pressed on him, a tension unlike any he had experienced before. Emily joined him outside, holding a flashlight that illuminated the familiar interior. "Dad, you look tense. she said softly. "I know you've always protected her, but you've taught me that stories are meant to be shared." John nodded, realizing the truth in her words. The Bronco was not just a car, it was a storyteller, a bridge between past and present, a living archive of life. As they prepared the vehicle for transport, John reflected on everything the Bronco had taught him: patience, resilience, loyalty, and the value of memories. Every mile, every adventure, every dent told a story worth honoring. Emily helped secure the last straps, their hands brushing occasionally, reinforcing the unspoken bond they shared. For decades, the Bronco had been a private world. Now it was on the brink of becoming a symbol recognized by many. Driving to the museum in the early morning, the tension reached its peak. The streets were quiet, the engine's familiar hum a comforting companion amid uncertainty. John felt the weight of decision, responsibility, and anticipation converging. Each turn of the wheel echoed like a heartbeat, a rhythm linking past, present, and future. Emily beside him offered steady reassurance, her presence a reminder that legacy was shared, not owned. Arriving at the museum, John stepped out, taking a deep breath. The Bronco's engine idled softly, ready for its moment. As the team guided it into position, the vehicle's history, love, and endurance became tangible to all who would see it. John watched, emotion welling in his chest, understanding that this day represented more than recognition. It was a testament to years of devotion, a culmination of journeys, struggles, and victories. The tension of uncertainty dissolved into reverent anticipation. The Bronco had carried them to this apex, ready to reveal its story to the world while preserving the soul that had defined it for 45 unforgettable years. The moment had arrived. The museum doors opened, and John watched as visitors approached the Bronco with awe, cameras clicking and whispers of admiration filling the air. The vehicle, once a private companion of 45 years, now stood at the center of attention, its faded red paint and worn edges glowing under the bright lights. John's heart pounded. This was the culmination of decades of care, memories, and devotion. Emily squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with pride. "Look, Dad, they see what we've always known," she said softly. John nodded, swallowing emotion as he realized the truth. The Bronco's story was more than his own. It was a shared legacy. Each dent, each scratch, each polished curve told a story that resonated far beyond their family. A small crowd gathered, asking questions, listening to tales of long drives, storms endured, and adventures taken. John found himself speaking with newfound confidence, his voice carrying the weight of experience and affection. For the first time, he saw the Bronco not just as a vehicle, but as a storyteller, a witness to life's trials and triumphs. As the day progressed, he understood that the Bronco had transcended ownership. It had become a symbol of loyalty, endurance, and love. 45 years of devotion culminated in this moment of shared recognition, and John felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The Bronco had carried him through life, and now it carried its story into the hearts of many. As the crowd slowly dispersed, John lingered beside the Bronco, tracing the familiar scratches and dents with a gentle hand. The vehicle had carried him through decades of life adventures, storms, quiet moments, and left around now, it stood as a bridge between personal memory and shared history. Emily joined him, her eyes reflecting admiration and gratitude. "Dad, we did it," she said softly. "The world knows a piece of what we've always known." John smiled, realizing the truth in her words. The Bronco's significance had grown beyond nostalgia. It had become a symbol of endurance, loyalty, and love that could inspire others. Every journey, every challenge, every triumph was now part of a narrative larger than themselves. He understood that the stories a car could carry were not limited to miles traveled, but extended into the hearts of those who witnessed them. The day closed with a serene sense of fulfillment. John knew that while the Bronco's wheels would continue to turn, its legacy would endure long after. He turned to Emily, squeezing her shoulder, and whispered, "Let's make sure the next chapter honors everything this car has been." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and click the next video to explore another unforgettable story of passion, perseverance, and adventure. The road continues, and every story deserves to be driven forward.